Good morning, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Please take your seat. Please find a seat. Please take your seat at this time. Please give each other a hug and please take your seat. We're about to get started. I want to invite everyone to take a seat here toward the front. Our service is about to begin. We invite everyone to please take their seats. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. In your seats, you should find a prayer book. The prayer book says Mishkan Tefillah on the cover. If you have a book that says Mishkan Tefillah on the cover, would you please raise it high over your head like Rabbi Timon is doing? If you have a book that says Mishkan Tefillah, please raise it up over your head so everyone can see what it looks like. Yeah, raise it high. Yeah, that's the one. Raise it up. Look around. This is what they look like. Very good. Please put them down. Thank you. If you do not have a book like that, if you have another book but not that book, please raise your empty hand, and one of our amazing ushers will come make sure you get a prayer book. If anyone needs a prayer book, raise your empty hand. Raise it high. I see some hands right here. David, Mary Beth, I see some hands up here. Raise your empty hand if you need a prayer book, and we'll make sure that you get one. And as you're waiting with your empty hands raised high, if you need a book, we'll continue singing these words together. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Let's try singing it together. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. These prayer books open from right to left. We open them now to page 192. Page 192, opening from right to left. Look in the lower right corner for page 192. If you have two numbers in the corner, we'll always be referring to the numbers in brackets. So if you have to choose the bracketed page, 192. You'll find the words Ma Tovu, which means how good it is to be in this space together. Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu. Again, page 192 in the brackets. Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu Alecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Yisrael Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu. Let's try singing together. Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu. You already sound beautiful. Vani berocha asdecha avo beitecha eshtacha benecha koshecha beiratecha Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu. A little louder. Ma Tovu. Again. Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu. The middle of 192. Vani tevinaticha Adonai netratzon Elohim berov chasdecha Aneni be'et ishecha Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu.
Shabbat Shalom. It's so good to be here together as we were just singing, to be here in our sacred space together. We still feel all of those months when we couldn't be here in this space to pray together, to be together as a community, to sing together, and it's still something special. It does not feel old at all. And so I want to just say a few words about being in this space. I can see that all of you got the memo where everybody's wearing a mask over your nose and over your mouth the entire time that we're here together. The only reason that you'll see somebody take off their mask is if they're up here leading and they rapid tested. Bridger and I rapid tested today, so that's how we're handling it. So while you're in the pews, we need you to keep that mask on the whole time, and of course everyone is vaccinated. And we do these things to increase everyone's comfort and feeling of safety, that you know that you're going to be okay while you're here, even if there are a lot of people in this space. And for those joining on Zoom, we also welcome you and include you in our community this morning as we pray and sing together. We're going to be following along in the prayer book, and you're going to find in this prayer book that there's Hebrew on the right page in most page spreads. The Hebrew will be on the right. And if you don't read Hebrew, if you don't know how to read or sing in Hebrew, well, you don't have to worry, because right next to the Hebrew, you'll find the transliteration. So every word is spelled out for you in English letters, so that you could join in every word, and we invite you to join in every word. Even if this is the first time you've ever been in a synagogue, even if you've never ever done this before, we invite you to join us as much as you want to, as much as you can. Below the Hebrew, you can see the English translation, so you can see the meaning of what we're saying. And on the left page, in most cases, what you're going to find there are English readings, English poetry that's trying to help you connect with the meaning of the prayers. It's giving you lots of different ways in to the experience of what we're doing together. And the reason this matters is that you, even if this is your first time here ever, you are actually not a spectator. You're not an audience. Part of why we have you up here friends of Lily and Ari is because we want you to feel part of it. And part of why we're so glad you're all up toward the front, we want you to feel part of it. We want you to feel like your voice matters here, because it does. We're not putting on a show, and you're not the audience. We're actually trying to create something together. And what we're trying to create, I want to explain to you so you know what this thing is you're about to do for the next few hours. You're going to be here for a while, so I want you to understand what you're doing here. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're celebrating this thing that is this ancient Jewish wisdom. And this ancient Jewish wisdom we call Shabbat. So what is Shabbat? Shabbat is the idea that if we don't ever rest, we don't ever take a day away from our work, whether that's schoolwork or work, we're going to get exhausted. We're going to ultimately get sick. It's not going to be good for us. We need a day to stop. We need a day to put down the work of the world. And as Jews, we understand the work of the world to include all the things we do to make the world better, to fix the world, to repair it, to heal, to build things, to create things. All that work is supposed to stop on this day. Because on this day, we're supposed to just appreciate what is, as if the world as it is beautiful, is whole, is as it should be. Now we know that tomorrow we'll be back to the work of the world, and in particular we'll be back to trying to repair the world and make it better. But today we act as if the world is exactly as it should be, and we can actually just rest in it. And this is so important, because what it does is it enables us, when we put down the work of the world, which by the way includes all the buzzing and beeping devices you may have in your pockets, those things get turned off. We don't want to hear them, for sure we don't want to hear them. So if you've got something in your pocket that might ring or buzz or beep, we do not want to hear it this morning. But also, you don't need it. Because the whole idea is all those things that are kind of poking at you, saying, hey, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. If you put that away, it gives you a whole different perspective. And the perspective is like, wow, this world is beautiful. This is a glorious day. Did you see the sky this morning? Did you see the trees with the changing leaves? Wow, my body is amazing. Look at what I can do. I can see colors and shapes and images. I can feel in my heart, in my body, I can feel. Maybe this morning I'm going to feel gratitude. Wow, this life is awesome. And it's happening right now. And it isn't forever, but it is right now. So I better enjoy it. That's what we're doing this morning. We are stopping to appreciate that we are alive, and it is wonderful. We're noticing all the things that we can be grateful for. We're remembering what it feels like to love and feel joy. We're remembering that our lives are precious and fleeting. That's what we're doing. So you're part of that. No one can do that for you. So use this book, any part of it that works for you. It could even be the blank spaces. Use the music. Use the prayers. Use the teachings. You're going to hear a lot of teachings this morning. Use those. Take this time. Just fully relax in your body. Fully relax into being here. And soak up as much as you can what it is to be in the miracle of life right now. That's what we're doing. So we're going to go now. Oh, I have one more thing to say. I was specifically to say this. That let's say you're coming along and you're into this. I explained it and you're like, yeah, that sounds good. I want to do that. But then you're reading along and you get to the name of God. Thanks. Maybe I don't feel connected to this idea of God. And they're talking about God in every single prayer. How do I relate to this? Now, maybe you're somebody who loves God and you see the name God, you're on fire, and you're like, yes, I'm in. Awesome. But if you're somebody who sees the name of God and you think, gosh, I'm not sure what to do with that. Okay, I'm going to give you an invitation. The invitation is to translate that word. Translate it. The point of it is for you to connect to what is bigger than you, what is awesome. So maybe that is this glorious day. Maybe that is your life. Maybe that is life itself. Maybe that is the ecosystem we're a part of. Maybe that is the universe. Maybe that is love. Maybe that is time and all the passing generations of time. What reminds you? You are very, very small, and your time here is very, very brief. And the place you find yourself and the experience you're in is awesome. That's what that word's pointing to. So if you can use another idea that gets you to that feeling, use a different idea. So now we're going to continue, and we're going to turn to a prayer about our bodies and in gratitude that we're alive and and we have bodies, and they're miraculous, and they heal. And the words for that prayer are not actually in your book. But Campbell's just going to sing them, and they're not so hard, and maybe you'll follow along. They're in English, something like that. And then the last line is in Hebrew, and it is in your book on page 194. And after that, we're going to go to the miracles of every day, which we say every morning. They're just like simple things about waking up and being alive that we're going to notice. And then we're going to go to Psalm 150, which is our psalm in which we just basically sing the word hallelujah a lot, because we're getting into the spirit that I've been describing. And so when we get to that prayer, even if you haven't been able to follow the other Hebrew, you can totally follow with hallelujah and join us and sing out and get into your bodies and get into the spirit. And let's see if we can raise up some energy in this place. Right now we're on 194.
I thank you for my life, body and the soul. Help me realize I am beautiful and whole. I'm perfect the way I am, and a little broken too. I will live each day as a gift I give to you. I'm perfect the way I am, and a little broken too. I will live each day as a gift I give to you. I will live each day as a gift I give to you. My God, my God. Oh, we can sing it over together. Oh. Sing it higher now. The middle of 194. Baruch atah Adonai Rofeh kol basar machli asor. Zokech Kefufi 200. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who stretches the earth over the waters. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who strengthens our steps. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who clothes the naked. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who gives strength to the weary. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe. Hama'avir she'na me'enai, u'truma me'afapai. 202. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe. Shasani b'tzelem Elohim. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has made me free. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe. Shasani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael b'gevurah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael b'tifarah. Let's get a bit more comfortable now. You shift your weight, stretch out a bit. Oh, these pews can be confining. See if you can find some space in them. Oh, tap your foot if you want. Oh.
Okay, so what we're going to do is, if you're on Zoom, you're going to have a chance to connect with each other. If you're here in the room, leave your spot, go find someone you don't know, introduce yourself to them, and wish them a Shabbat Shalom. And listen for my voice, because I'm going to call you back pretty soon. What's going to happen next is we are going to we're going to invite forward Lily's aunt and uncle, Amy and Andrew Friedman, and Ari's parents, David and Jennifer Gordon. And they're going to come forward and give Ari and Lily, we're going to need Lily and Ari to also come forward, and they're going to give them Talitot. You're going to give them talitot, and so let me tell you what a talis is. This is a talis or a talit. It's a prayer shawl that Jews wear when we pray, particularly in the mornings. And what's important about the talit is that it has on the corners these tzitzit, which are fringes. And these fringes represent the way of life of the Jewish person. And so as Ari and Lily put this on their shoulders, they're saying something. What they're saying is, we all know they worked really hard for this day, and they waited a long time for this day. You might think, we might think that, okay, well, this is it, they did it. But actually, this day is just the beginning of the rest of their lives living as Jews. And this talit represents that as they put it on their shoulders. They're going to take it from their loved ones, they're going to read the blessing and put it around their shoulders, so they're going to come close enough that anybody on Zoom can also see them. Sorry, that's good. Interpreters finding a blessing for them to look at.
So you're going to take the talit first, yeah? Hold on 1 second. You're both going to say it together. Face this way.
All right.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehitatef b'tzitzit.
Amen. Amen. We turn now to page 224 for the Chatzit Kaddish, and if you're able, we invite you to please rise and face this way towards Jerusalem. Yitkadav v'yitkadash ve'rava, v'lani v'achimtei v'nichmatutei, v'chayechom yomechom v'chayechom beit Yisrael, ha'elam izman karmi v'nogu amen, yehi shnei rava lechana, le'adam le'amaya, yitvarach v'yishlach ויתהדר שמי קודשה וריחו לעינה מכל יחתה ושבירתה ושבתתה ונחמתה דמירה בעלמה וינהגו עליהם 226 ברכו את אדוני
Please join me in the middle of page 229. You are praised, who rolls out the rough raw clay of the universe into delicate vessels of light. And for nothing at all, we could perceive an world that has turned to old, a shimmering creation right before our eyes, made this moment just for us. How much of life reveals your presence? How much Torah unfolds from each new flower, from each new wave that breaks upon the sea? You are praised, who forms from the clay that cooks our lives, the delicate vessels which contain our light. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMeorot. We come now on page 230 to Ahava Rabbah. God. This is our prayer in gratitude for learning. Today we celebrate two young people's learning, that they've put so much effort into learning how to be able to read from the Torah. They're going to become our teachers this morning. And we're going to have an opportunity to learn this morning. And this is a prayer saying, thank you, God, for loving us so much that you give us these minds that can continually expand and deepen, can become ever more complex, and also find a way to simple within the complexity, and dedicate themselves to wisdom and pray together.
Near the bottom of 230. Meodecha 234. Vehayu Advarim Ha'ele Asher Anochi Netzavecha Yom Ad Levavecha Veshinadam Levanecha V'divartam Veshitecha V'veitecha Uvlechtecha V'derech V'ushochtecha V'kumecha וכשאתה מאוד הידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתרתם למזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Amen. 240.
In a bit. It's like a rote prayer in which we describe God as being full of might and power, and using that power to be with whoever is in need. Someone who has fallen, someone who is sick, someone who is in prison, whoever needs to be lifted up. And I am thinking about that prayer this morning as I am thinking about what happened in our legal system yesterday, and how we as a country are failing right now to stand up for the people who are most in need to be stood up for. Our justice system is in some ways twisted and not seeing clearly what is fair, what is just, and how to end the oppression that so mars our land. And so as we pray this prayer this morning, I'm thinking about this model of power. Power isn't meant to be concentrated with those who already have it. Power in God's use is meant to be used to even out the injustices, the imbalances, to make the world more fair, to make the world more loving. This prayer is very much about God using God's love to care for every one of us, particularly when we are in need. So as we pray this morning, let's pray for justice in our land. Let's pray for compassion for the other. Let's pray for love across differences. Let us pray for ultimately peace as we come to the Avigail together. Verse 242.
Silently through page 261 using the words of these pages, the words of our hearts. When we've concluded, we may be seated. 56. Thanksgiving and Hanukkah approaching, we draw our attention to these words from our blessing for Thanksgiving, part of our daily liturgy. The third paragraph of Hebrew speaks of God as the source of goodness, source of compassion, never-ending source of these things. Let us do our best to tap into them right now in this moment.
Very soon we are going to enjoy the Stay There Kriyat HaTorah service for the reading of Torah. We're going to take the Torah out of that ark. Two of them actually. We're going to hear them read, we're going to bless them, and have some special moments of blessing in several people's lives. But first, we have some greetings and announcements from our President John Horowitz and our Trustee Joanna Pressman.
Good morning and Shabbat Shalom, everybody. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, I want to welcome you all to all of you who are joining us here in person, as well to all of you who are joining us virtually. I want to start by saying Mazel Tov to Lily and Arielle. I'm excited to hear from you this morning and learn from both of you this morning. I want to say Mazel Tov as well to Ruth, as well as to her parents, Avigail and Rebecca, and her little sister, Sarah, on receiving her Hebrew name this morning. Finally, Mazel Tov to Sebastian Lewin, who's becoming Bar Mitzvah at 4:30 today here in the sanctuary. All are welcome to join. As always, I want to thank our leaders. Thank you, Rabbi Timoner, Cantor Breitzer, for leading us this morning. I want to thank our interim executive director, Mark Flaxer, and his staff for allowing us to be in community this morning and every day. I want to thank our volunteer ushers in the back, David Allison and Lynn Harris, thank you. I want to thank Maribeth Batcha as well, who's supporting us in person. And finally, I want to thank our virtual usher, Ben Kern. Thank you, Ben. We also have some announcements, and so now I'm going to pass it off to my fellow trustee, Joanna Pressman.
Thank you very much, John. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Here are the announcements. First, a quick look back and a thank you to everyone that participated in the powerful interfaith prayer, song, and connection last weekend that we had with our friends at Antioch Baptist Church. In case you missed it, you can watch the recordings from both Friday night at CBE and Sunday morning at ABC on our Facebook page. And please stay tuned for more on this initiative with our next event coming up during Martin Luther King Jr. weekend in January. Looking ahead to next Shabbat, November 26th and 27th, and the last two Shabbatot of the year, December 24th and 25th, and December 31st, January 1st. Just a note that the CBE buildings will be closed for those holiday weeks, so we will hold Shabbat services only on Zoom and live streamed to our website and Facebook. Also, there will not be Gan Shabbat or Shiro Shabbat next week. Looking a little bit more close in time ahead, as in right after this service, anyone who wants to learn how to lift the Torah or get a little practice in that is welcome to join Trustee Jonathan Spear along with a member of the clergy after Shabbat services this week right here. If you're on Zoom and want to pop on over, you're welcome to do that. We just want to make sure that everybody who would like to feels comfortable participating with the Torah during services. And last but not least, on December 3rd, CBE will light up the night to celebrate Hanukkah as a joined community, starting with an outdoor youth and family gathering at 5:30, followed by Rabbi Colin's installation and a ritual celebration of the merger of CBE and Union Temple in the sanctuary at 6:30. And then at 8 p.m., we're going to have an epic babysitter-worthy cocktail party in the street with hot food, warm drinks, music, dancing, and light to celebrate this momentous day for our community. This night will be a very big deal for CBE, and we can't wait to see you there. Please be sure to subscribe to our weekly advisory email and check our website at cbebk.org for details about everything that's happening at CBE. Thank you all for being here, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, and thank you, Joanna, and thank you, John. And I just want to say the reason that Joanna is suggesting you might want to watch the recordings of last weekend is those who were here know that it was unbelievable, and you're going to want to see it. It was amazing, and we're looking forward to what's next in January for that. And to just underline, December 3rd is not to be missed. It's one of those moments when CBE is CBE, and we remember forever coming together in the way that we will, and it's also just going to be a lot of fun. All right, we're ready to take those Torahs from the Ark. We're going to need, of course, Ari and Lily, and then we're going to need Lily's aunt and uncle, Elise and Grant Sentner, and Ari's grandparents, Michael Kaiser and Betty Kaplan and Ron and Sally Gordon. They're going to come up and open the Ark, and then once the Torahs are out, and Lily and Ari are processing around the room, Hakafa, we're going to want Evie, Hannah, Elise, and Grant Sentner, and Jonathan Kaiser, Joshua Wilson, and Benjamin Gordon to follow them around the room. But right now we need the Ark openers and Ari and Lily, and we are turning to page 362, and I ask everyone who can to please rise.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
You may be seated. We have a complicated Torah morning this morning. We are still in the period, as Ari and Lily's families know very well, we're still in the period where we have B'nai Mitzvah who are rescheduled from sometime during the pandemic. So we're reading from all over the Torah. Now, you may know, you may not, that Jews read Torah in a sequence. We read Torah, we start in the fall with the book of Genesis, and then we read all the way through the whole Torah. But on these weeks when we're still making up B'nai Mitzvah from other times, we're reading from all over. So this morning, you're going to get samplings from Genesis, from Leviticus, and from Numbers. And part of the fun of these mornings is that we then get to kind of like think, okay, how do we connect these dots between these different things?
I'm so excited to hear how you do that.
Yeah, it's going to be, maybe a stretch. You'll decide. Okay, so this morning, not only do we have two mitzvah, but we also get to celebrate the naming of a new person. So we are excited to invite up for the Aliyah, Rebecca and Avigail, my neighbor Dahan, along with Sarah, who's a big sister. It's very important, and little baby Ruth is going to come forward. And also we want to invite their grandparents to come forward with them. So it's Samuel and Tamar Dahan and Cody and Mark Kleinhandler will come up also just to stand with them. They're going to make the Aliyah. And so something to know about Rebecca and Arielle is that Rebecca in particular has been the coordinator of our Shir Shabbat program, which is Shabbat morning every single week, 9:30 in the morning. The littlest ones in our community come together with their parents and with somebody very special, whose name is Debbie Bruckman, who leads the music, and it's just like everybody loves it so much. I see people in the background like this, yeah, they love it so much. So Debbie is doing the honor of reading the Torah for this special moment in the life of this beautiful family. She is actually reading, believe it or not, from this week's Torah portion. Yeah, and so that's awesome. So that's Vayishlach, and we're in Genesis chapter 32, verse 25. That's chapter 32, verse 25. So if you are wanting to follow along, you're going to switch from the Siddur, the prayer book that we've been using, to another book that's there in the pews, and it says on the front of it, the Torah. That's the one you want. And it's chapter 32, verse 25, which you will find on page 220 in that book. All right, so Rebecca and Arielle are going to make the blessing, and then Debbie's going to read the Torah, and then we're going to make the closing blessing, and then we're going to get to name Ruth.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. ויוותר יעקב לבדו ויאבק איש עמו עד עלות השחר. וירא כי לא יכול לו ויגע בכף ירכו ותקע כף ירך יעקב באבקו עמו. ויאמר שלחני כי עלה השחר, ויאמר לא אשליך כי אם ברכתני.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
All right, you ready for this? The first blessing that you are going to make is blessing and gratitude for bringing your child into the covenant. So you're going to repeat after me. Baruch Atah Adonai
Baruch Atah Adonai
Eloheinu melech haolam
Eloheinu melech haolam
asher kiddushanu
asher kiddushanu
b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu
b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu
v'hachnisa
b'ivrit
b'ivrit Am Yisrael.
Am Yisrael.
We praise you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who follows us with mitzvot and commands us to bring our daughter into the covenant of our people Israel. Now, we give Ruth her Hebrew name, which is not so different from her English name.
Oops.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. Eloheinu v'Elohei avotinu v'imotinu, kayem et hayata hazot le'aviha u'le'ima. Yikare shma b'Yisrael, Ruth Avigail bat Eyal v'Rivka Morel. ישמח האב ביוצאת חלציו ותגל עמה בפריד בטנה, זאת הקטנה. זולה תהיה. בשם שנתפסה לברית כן תיכנס לתורה ולחופה למעשים טובים. Our God, God of our mothers and our fathers, sustain this beautiful child through her parents' loving care. Let her be known among our people Israel by the name Ruth Avigail, daughter of Rebecca and Arielle. May her name be a source of joy to her and inspire her to serve our people and all humankind. May her parents rejoice in her growth of body and soul. And as they brought her into the covenant, so may they bring her with wisdom and patience into the study of Torah and a life of good deeds and a loving relationship worthy of God's blessing. And we say together,
Amen.
Amen. So now we get to hear a little bit about Ruth Avigail, the names that she has received and where they come from.
Shalom everyone, and thank you so much for being here to welcome our daughter Ruth Avigail to the Jewish community at CBE, surrounded by our families, our friends, and CBE, which we love being in. We cannot wait to see Ruth growing around this community, led by our daughter. Yes. Ruth is named after my grandmother, Ruth Labo, which was an amazing strong woman. it was important to give this Ruth a name to celebrate who my grandma was. She had an amazing story. It would take days to narrate, but above all, my grandma was the funniest grown-up I was around as a kid. She always had great stories and great jokes, despite not even talking the same language as I did. I remember spending my summer at my grandparents in Haifa, in Israel, looking forward every time to the laughter that my grandma would provide to me and my siblings. She was always so positive and full of life, all the way late in her 90s. She always was an incredible athlete, swimming daily, even in her 80s. And once in her youth was the champion of Israel in the 100-meter dash. To me, my grandma was a superhero, and I hope Ruth will follow her footsteps. May she grow to be optimistic about everything and bring laughter to anyone who needs it.
So, like my nephew Avi, Ruth Abigail is also named after my grandfather, Abraham Rosenstock. If you knew my grandpa, it wouldn't come as a surprise if he has more than one great-grandchild named after him. My grandpa was kind and generous and loving, truly a mensch. He was passionate about family, cooking, being part of his synagogue community, and the Yankees. Originally from what is now the Czech Republic, my grandfather was a Holocaust survivor who, upon being freed from a Siberian labor camp, discovered his whole family had perished, and then he escaped to what was then Palestine. He and my grandmother met during the war that established the state of Israel. We saw my grandparents often growing up, nearly every weekend. My grandfather was an excellent cook who took pride in making people feel welcome in their home. When I think of my grandpa, I think of the tiny things, like walks alone to what we called the yellow and blue store, which to other people was currently known as Rite Aid. I don't remember what we talked about during those times, but I knew that I loved the alone time with him, or him helping me pick vegetables or grapes from his backyard garden, especially green peas, which were my favorite. My grandpa loved gadgets. He always had specific tools for specific jobs, each with his own place. During a hurricane one year, when the electricity went out for days, my grandparents struggled because my grandfather's beloved electric can opener was electric. Once set in place, you could watch it open a can, hands-free. My mom urged him to get a different can opener before the next storm. Being who he was, he bought a battery-operated one instead of the manual one she had in mind. When my grandparents moved to Boca Raton when I was 13, we would travel to Florida frequently. My grandparents were incredibly involved in their synagogue, and my grandfather in particular took on any role or any responsibility he could. While he eventually was the vice president of their synagogue, it wasn't that role that was so striking for me. If we went to the synagogue, we had to allow for extra time before we had to be anywhere else. When he walked into the building, everyone wanted to talk to him. He was friends with everyone. He made them feel important and heard. He was the person they called for every little thing. From fixing the copy machine, fundraising by selling yard side plaques, and to making simple repairs in the synagogue office. My grandpa understood that being part of a community was simply about showing up and doing what was needed. Ruth Abigail. Your name, Ruth, means friend or friendship. Sarah has long waited for a younger sister. We hope that you and Sarah continue to grow your beautiful bond as sisters and become lifelong friends and confidants, not just because you are sisters, but because you truly like and love each other. Avigail is literally my father's joy. You have been a joy to us before you were even born. We are so grateful to have you, a joy during this challenging time. May you continue to be a joy to our family and our community, and may you find joy and happiness in all that you do and in your life.
So beautiful. So now we all get to participate in blessing Ruth Abigail. So I want to hear from you. What are your wishes for her? What are your blessings? Anything? Just call out one word. What do you wish for this new little baby? Happiness, health, peace, love, the reverse of climate change.
Love
Music. Intelligence, prosperity, Torah, laughter, joy, courage, cookies, we'll end there. with the cookies. And we're going to get a chance now to sing together this blessing about being grateful that we're alive and we were sustained and we were brought to this moment.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higianu l'azman hazeh.
Mazel tov!
While you're in the clapping mood, we're going to have some Torah scroll logistics now as promised. So we need everyone to clap and sing like this. Ready? Let's go. Here we go. Well done. We're going to come back to that later. Don't worry.
So now we're ready for Lily to come up. And she is going to be, here, I have to look over there. Lily to come up, and she's going to be reading from Leviticus. Like that. We're leaping from Genesis to Leviticus. And we're in chapter 19, verse 26. You're going to find that on page 802 of your Torah commentaries. And we're going to, for the second aliyah, for our first aliyah, we're going to invite forward Betsy and Derek Sentner, her parents.
Yamdu on Shabbat Mitzvah Rishona L'Aliyat Torah. First, they're going to bless.
Baruch atah Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai Mevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Lo tachalu al adam, lo tenaheshu, lo te'anenu, lo takifu ve'ad roshehem, lo tashit et ve'azekaneha, neseret lanefesh, lo titnu b'sarhem utov ve'ka'akam, lo titnu b'hem ani Adonai.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Come around to this way.
All right, now we're going to invite Lily's grandparents, Linda and Bernie Freeman. And we're going to also invite her other grandparents, Joanne and Stuart Sentner, to come up. They're going to be offering blessing in English after the Hebrew blessing.
Lily's continuing from Leviticus chapter 19, verse 29. Leviticus 19, 29.
Baruch Adonai Baruch
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torah. Baruch Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Lo, al tifnu, al tehalel et shviteha, lehaznota, velo tizne haaretz ume al haaretz ima, et shem totai tishmaru, umekdashi tira'u, ani Adonai. Al tehalel, al tifnu, el ha'avot, ve'el ha'yironim, al tavakshu v'tama b'hem, ani
Adonai Elohechem.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah, names v'hayei olam atah b'eseinu. Baruch Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. You can stay right here.
Stay right here
Yeah.
for a moment.
You
Is
go
anyone
around.
here that's blessing?
What?
May you live to see your world fulfilled. May your destiny be for the world still to come. And may you trust in generations past and yet to be.
May your heart be filled with intuition and your words be rich in understanding. May songs of praise ever be upon your tongue, and your visions clarify a straight path before you.
May your eyes shine with the light of the Torah, and your face reflect the brightness of the heavens.
May your lips ever speak wisdom and your fulfillment be in the righteousness.
Even as you ever yearn to hear the words of the ancient one of holiness.
And with the words of blessing from your grandparents still ringing in your ears, Lily, we're going to call you to Torah now as about Mitzvah. I'm going to chant your Hebrew name. And when I'm done, you'll take the corner of your talit and touch where you'll continue, and then make the opening blessing. Tamod, 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 Abukora Bata Mitzvah, Sarah Bat Basha Derek Torah, Chizki Beitzi.
Baruch et Adonai HaBorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaBorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Mipnei seifan taku, v'hardarta b'nei zaken, v'yarata me'elohecha, ani Adonai, v'hiyagu iteha ger v'atzehem, lo tanu oto, kezra mikem, v'hiya lahem hager, hagar yitem, v'yahavta lo kamacha, ki gerim hayitem, be'eretz Mitzrayim, ani
Adonai Elohechem.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'hayei olam natan b'toheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasher Koach.
Yasher Koach. When someone does something we think is wonderful in a synagogue, we say Yasher Koach.
Yasher Koach. All right, remember that song?
All right. We pause between Leviticus and Numbers. We're going to take a pause. The Torah here in our midst. We always pause on Shabbat morning when we have this Torah here. to use its strength to help us pray for people who are in need of healing. So we're going to sing Shabbat now, and we're going to pause in between the stanzas, and I'm going to invite you to say out loud names of people you're thinking about, people who need healing, people who maybe are suffering, struggling, or ill, and who need healing. So we'll sing together. We're on page 371 in your prayer books. And we'll pray together for healing. Together. All right, so now we are in the book of Numbers, and we're on Numbers chapter 14, verse 23. So you're going to look at page 984 in your Torah commentary, if you're wanting to follow along. Numbers chapter 14, verse 23. And we're going to invite, so Cantor Wrights is going to be chanting this Aliyah. We're going to invite Ari's parents, Jennifer and David Gordon, to come up with this Aliyah.
יעמדו על שבת המצווה שנתגלה לתורה. Ben, you want to come up as well?
Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai Mevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. יראו את הארץ אשר נשבעתי לאבותם וכל מנעצי לא יראוה. ועבדי חלה ועקב הייתה רוח אחרת עמו וימלא אחרי. הביא אותי אל הארץ אשר בה שמע וזרעו יורישנה. והעמלקי והכנעני יושב בעמק מחר פנו שאו לכם המדבר דרך ים סוף.
Yeshua.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam notah b'choleinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yeshua, you can come on that side.
Now Arielle is going to be chanting Torah, and we invite her grandparents Danielle and Doug Wilson to come forward for the Aliyah.
Yamdu asalim Shabbat Mitzvah Sheni Aliyah Torah. Continuing from Numbers chapter 14, verse 26.
Baruch Adonai Habaram
Baruch
Varach.
Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Habarak L'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bahar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe ve'el Aharon lemor ad matai la'edah hara'a hazot asher hema malinim alai et tunot b'nei Yisrael asher hema malinim alai
Shamati.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam notah b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. We wish everyone to stay right here as we call Ari to Torah as a mitzvah by her Hebrew name, which I'll chant. Then she'll take the corner of her talit and touch where she'll continue before making the blessing. Tamod, 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 Abuchora bat mitzvah, Ariel Bajan David, Ariel Torah, Kiski, Veyusi.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Emor alechem chai ani ne'um Adonai imlo ka'asher dibartem be'oznai kein e'aseh lachem b'midbar hazeh yiplu fikrechem lachol pukudechem lachol mizbarchem mibein 20 shana v'mal'ah asher halinotem alai im atem tavo'u el ha'aretz asher nasati et yadi לשכן אתכם בה, כי אם כלב בן יפונה,
ויהושע בנו.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yeshua.
Yeshua.
Beautiful words of Torah we heard chanted from both our Mitzvah who have learned so much leading up to this day. And speaking of learning,
Is it time for Yachad to go? All right, if you're on Zoom in Yachad, you can head off to class. You're going to see a link in the chat telling you where to go.
Thanks.
Right. And we are ready now to lift and dress our Torah. Adam Freifeld is going to do Hadba, and we're going to invite Tyler Sentner and Benjamin Gordon, Lily's brother and Ari's brother, to dress the Torah. We ask everyone to please rise.
page 370 in your prayer book. Please be seated.
All right. We have now heard the Torah from three different parts of the Torah. Don't get that everywhere, every Shabbat. It's pretty unusual. Now we're going to be hearing the words of the prophets. We're going to be hearing from Amos and from the book of Joshua. And you're going to be looking, we're starting with Amos chapter 9, verse 13. You're going to be looking at page 815 in your Torah commentary. And then when we switch from Lily to Ari, you're going to skip to page 1000. So you're right now on page 815, and you're going to skip to page 1000. We're moving from Amos chapter 9 to Joshua chapter 2. And part of what this is about is we're watching Torah move through time. We heard it in its original, and then we're hearing it in the mouths of the prophets. We're trying to apply the lessons of Torah to their time, and we next are going to try to apply the lessons of Torah to our time.
Is there any lesson we should hear now about what we're getting?
Yeah. So you're getting something that crinkles into your hands. There's candy and little plastic wrappers. And so we're going to ask you to try to not crinkle it so much if you can, so we can really hear how the Torah being chanted. But also, you might think, oh, this is a delicious treat for me to enjoy right now. But actually, no, it's not. It's going to become a very sweet shower soon upon our mitzvah. You're going to, when that time comes. So you might think, I'm gonna look, I guess, both directions, but everybody, you might think like, oh, this is a chance to throw really hard and see if I might be able to hit them really hard. You're not gonna do that. But instead you're gonna think like, oh, what is a gentle shower? So you just feel like, oh, it has a big lob, it arcs high and comes down. That's what you're gonna do, okay? Not yet, but when they're done, you got it. Maybe an underhand throw is a nice idea. So that's when they're finished with the closing blessing, we will be able to shower them with sweetness.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bahar b'nvi'im tovim v'ratzah v'divreihem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah u'b'Moshe avdo u'b'Yisrael Amo u'divei ha'emet v'tzedek. Hinei yamim ba'im ne'um Adonai v'nigash horesh b'kotzer v'dorek anavim b'Moshe hazara v'hitifu heharim asis v'hol hagavaot titmogadna Veshanti Eshemut Ami Israel Uvanu Arim Neshamot Veyashavu Venatehu Haramim Veshantu Einam Ve'asu Ganot Ve'efalu Ephraim Unatantim Ad Matam Velo Yunateshu Ve'al Matam Asher Natanti lahem amar Elohecha vayalchu vayavo'u hahara vayeshevu sham shloshet yamim ad shavu haradifim vayharshu haradifim bechol haderech v'lo matza'u vayashuvu shnei ha'anashim vayeredu meha'ar vaya'avaru vayavo'u el Yehoshua v'nenun v'sapru lo et kol hamotzeot otam vayomeru el Yehoshua ki natan Adonai be'agdenu et kol ha'aretz Vegam namogu יושבי הארץ מפנינו. ברוך אתה אדוני מלך העולם, צור כל העולמים, צדיק בכל הדורות, האל הנאמן, האומר ועושה, המדבר ומקיים, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנעים ועל יום השבת הזה, שנתת לנו, אדוני אלוהינו, לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ותפארת. על הכל, אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך בפי כל חי, תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש
Not that it was a competition, but you definitely picked up a lot. Thank you.
For a second there, Canterbury, so I thought you were saying that they threw harder and that made them win, which is not the message we are
No, not the slightest.
Excellent.
But there was some excellent lobbing. That was the word you used before, lob. You talked about lobbing. There was some excellent lobbing.
There was some excellent lobbing. Good. Beautiful. All right, so now you have a little taste of sweetness, because you know, the prophet Ezekiel said the Torah tastes like honey. This is now fruit-flavored gummy honey. And you get to taste that sweetness as you're going to hear our B'not Mitzvah teach us Torah this morning, as they are going to tell us what they saw in Torah. We heard now the prophets' voices, now we hear their voices. And you know, everyone knows that the Torah, it was written a really long time ago. It was in a different world. And it can feel like, well, what does this text have to do with me today? And our B'not Mitzvah are struggling with that question, and they're going to bring us their perspectives of what they saw. And who's going to go first? Let's see. We're going to have Lily go first. And she's, if you remember, she's speaking on the book of Leviticus on Parshat Kiddushim.
Oh. Felix follow first.
Okay. My Torah portion is about how the people can be holy. Some of the rules God gives are to observe Shabbat, respect your parents, don't pervert justice, don't gossip, don't rob, don't steal, don't incise any marks on yourself, don't cut off your beard, don't wear a garment made of a mixture of wool and linen. Wait a second, I get respect your parents, and don't gossip, but don't cut off your beard, and don't make marks on your skin, and don't wear a mixture of wool and linen? It seems like these have to do with appearances. It made me ask, why does God care about that? And apart from my Torah portion, it states, you shall not round off the side growth of your head or destroy the side growth of your beard. Sforno, a 16th century Italian rabbi, says that we shouldn't remove the hair from our head because of custom of Gentile clergy of fools and drunkards. He also says that when a man shaves his beard, it removes his dignity. My Torah portion also states, you shall not put on cloth from a mixture of two kinds of material. Midrash Tanhuma Bereshit, written around the 6th century, says that this is connected to the story of Cain and Abel. Cain brings an offering of flax seeds, which God rejects. Abel brings an offering of wool, which God enjoys. As you might remember, Cain kills Abel. Midrash Tanhuma says that we're not supposed to wear clothes from a mixture of these two kinds of materials because the offerings of sinner should not be mixed with the offerings of an innocent. Finally, let's look at the verse, "You shall not make gashes in your flesh for the day, or incise any marks on yourself. I am the Lord." Over 2,000 years of reading this verse, there have been many different ideas people have taken away from it. Rashi, an 11th century French rabbi, interprets this to mean a writing engraved and sunk into the flesh and which can never be erased because it is pricked in with the needle, remains black forever. Based on what Rashi is saying, he is talking about tattoos being forbidden. According to Mishnah Makot, written in the 3rd century, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he is not liable until he writes the name of an idol there. As it says in the Torah, "Do not tattoo yourself, for I am God." In other words, he is saying that you get in trouble if you tattoo yourself, but only if you tattoo the name of a false god. I would disagree with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and say that "do not tattoo yourself, for I am God" means don't get any tattoo. Even though, according to the Torah, it says Jews should not get tattoos, another perspective that has come up recently is that for grandchildren of Holocaust survivors to get tattoos of the numbers their grandparents were given in the concentration camps. An article I read in the New York Times said, when Eli Sager showed her grandfather the new tattoo on her left forearm, he bent his head to kiss it. I want to tell them my grandfather's story and the Holocaust story. I think this is important to realize because we should remember the terrible things that happened to Jews during this time and have their stories live on. Even though tattooing goes against the Torah, I think this take on it is an important aspect to realize and on how we can commemorate the Holocaust. Personally, I'm not planning on getting a tattoo, but I still think the fact that my Torah portion focuses on appearances is relevant to my life. Just look at what we are all wearing right now. When services were on Zoom, nobody was dressed up. Admit it, we were all wearing our pajama pants. My mom and I went store after store trying to find the right dress, but we ended up ordering something online. And then we had to get shoes. Just like appearance mattered to God in my parsha, appearance matters on this day too. Maybe it mattered to God because God wanted us to bring our best. And you might have realized, no, my dress is not made of a mixture of all linen. In case you were worried, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Yasher Koach Lily. Now we get to hear from Ari. She's speaking about Shalach in the book of Numbers.
To set the scene, God has brought the Israelites out of Egypt by various miracles, including plagues, parting the sea, and a pillar of fire. They have almost reached Canaan, the Holy Land, and they have sent out 10 spies to investigate it. In the beginning of this portion, the spies return and report that the land is rich with farming land. It has honey and produce, and seems to be a perfect land. But in order to live there, they would have to fight a battle. The spies told the people there was no way they could win the battle. Upon hearing this, the people cried out in despair. They expressed very clearly how much they did not want to fight the battle. Despite both the spies and the people not wanting to invade, Joshua and Caleb had faith that they would win, because God had sent them there. They tried to convince everyone to share that faith and to go into the battle for the promised land. But even though they tried very hard to persuade everyone, the people were afraid. They had no faith and decided not to fight. God was very angry that the people did not think they would win the battle for the land he had sent them to. After all, God had sent them to the Holy Land. Moses pled with God to not kill everyone for their poor, faithless decision, explaining that if God killed everyone, it would make God look bad. Instead, God said that the Israelites would have to wander in the desert for 40 years, and every man from 20 to 60 years old, except Joshua and Caleb, would die in the desert. And God killed the 10 spies immediately because of their lack of faith. This seems harsh to me. Were the extreme punishments really necessary? Did all men from 20 to 60 years old really have to perish? Did all of the people have to stay in the desert for 40 years? Did the 10 spies have to die immediately? Could there have been any other punishment for their lack of faith other than exile and massacre? According to Nechama Leibowitz, a 20th century biblical scholar, the people cried out because they were afraid of responsibility. They had been in bondage their entire life, and now that they were out of bondage, they were crying about it. They didn't want to handle their own lives, even after God had performed so many miracles to free them. In crying out, they were saying they wanted to go back to Egypt, even though it would mean returning to slavery. This was very offensive to God because God had provided plagues, parted the sea, and had a pillar of fire to bring them not only to freedom, but all the way to the edge of the Holy Land. It seems ridiculous that they had just escaped bondage and they wanted to go right back. Rashi, a rabbi from 11th century France, speculated that the Jews should not have used spies. They should have just gone into the Holy Land. They had already experienced miracles, and they knew God was going to support them. This makes the extreme punishment seem slightly more justified, because even after they experienced ridiculously amazing miracles, they were doubting God's power and goodness. It makes sense that this doubt was offensive to God. Rabbi Simeon ben Yochai from the 2nd century has a different take. He blamed the spies rather than the people. Rabbi ben Yochai said that the spies left their scouting mission believing they would never find a way to win. They didn't return with hopeful reports because they didn't look for anything that would make the Jews successful. They closed their minds, and they didn't try to bring the Jews to the Holy Land. This is a very strong justification for extreme punishment. The fact that the spies already knew what they were going to say and didn't try to actually scout out the Holy Land seems crazy because of everything that the people and God went through to get there. According to Rabbi ben Yochai, the Jews were guaranteed to get into the Holy Land, but the spies did not want to try. Not only did the spies lie to themselves, they lied to the people. And that seems disrespectful. Nechama Leibowitz believes that the sin of the spies was deliberately exaggerating how hard the battle would be for their own benefit. The benefit being that they would not have to fight the war. She believed that the spies only got punished because of their lies. This somewhat justifies the punishment God gave. The sin was the actual lying. But that seems very extreme, because while lying is a sin, it is one of the lesser sins. It seems very harsh to kill someone for lying. Overall, even though God has many reasons to be angry, perhaps God could have handled it in a less extreme way. For example, God could have made them stay in the desert for 10 years. I felt this portion directly connects to today's issues in two ways: fake news and the death penalty. In Rabbi ben Yochai's analysis, the spies' report was essentially fake news. The spies reported they could not win the battle, which was a self-interested lie. In America today, people now believe that mainstream news reports are fake. This is a very large problem in itself. Today, knowing what to believe is becoming a challenge. This directly connects to the Parsha because of the spies' fake news they told all the people. God choosing to kill all the men aged 20 to 60 connects to today in terms of the death penalty. As you may have guessed from my earlier comments, I question whether death was the appropriate sentence for failing to have faith in God's ability to help them win the battle. In America today, the death penalty is all too often applied unjustly. According to the National Academy of Sciences from 2020, at least 4.1% of descendants sentenced to death in the United States are innocent of the crimes they are convicted of. This seems like a horribly large number of people who are being killed for crimes they did not commit. After analyzing the sources I talked about before, I understand the reasons God killed the men in the Parsha, but I don't agree with his actions. Were the people really irredeemable? Is anyone? I wonder if the Jewish women were also killed. We have to assume that they had to wander in the desert for 40 years right along with the men, so that the people could enter the Promised Land. But they aren't mentioned in the text, and there's no claim they didn't want to invade or have faith in God. There's no claim that they committed any crime, and yet it seems that they were also punished. Again, it seems ridiculous that innocent people are being harshly punished. As people of the modern world, it is our job to question the stories in the Torah, taking lessons from both the just and the unjust parts, and decide how we want to live. From the Parsha, I take the lesson that unjust punishments and false news are both things to be wary of and work against. I support organizations such as the ACLU and the Innocence Project which fight against the death penalty, and the Committee to Protect Journalists, which promotes freedom of the press and defends the right of journalists to report the news safely and without fear of reprisal. I recommend you to look into these organizations and consider supporting them too. Shabbat Shalom.
Koach, Ari, and Lily, you raised so many interesting questions for us today. Ari, you raised a question at the very end about the invisibility of the women in this parsha and how they seem to have been punished along with the men, though it's not clear. You also raised the question of the death penalty. You also raised the question about the right of journalists to report the truth in the ways that has become muddied and confused in recent years through an active campaign, intentional campaign to make us doubt all forms of truth. Lily, you raised the questions about some of these mitzvot that are in your parsha, that some of them were obviously made sense to you, respecting parents, for example, and some of them didn't make sense to you. Why couldn't men cut the sides of their faces and their beards? Why couldn't people put gashes in their skin or ink in their skin? And why couldn't we wear wool and linen together? And so together you've raised a number of questions. I'm not going to pursue any one of the questions, but I am going to point out that both of you did something today that we take for granted in this synagogue that would be radical or even shocking in many religious settings, which is that you both questioned the Torah and you questioned God. And in many religious settings, that is out of bounds. You're not allowed to do that. And I want to talk a little bit about how that's so normal for us and why, and what we can learn from it. So, Lily, you were questioning these mitzvot that are in the Torah that people observe, and many of us do not. And Ari, you were questioning God's justice. Did God's self, behave in a way? By the way, I think you may have called God he, and I just want to say for the record, God is beyond gender. If somebody wants to make a case for me about why God is male, we are not going to call God male. God is beyond gender. But you were talking about the idea that God's own justice, God, the source of justice, was behaving unjustly. How can you get up here and say that? How did I allow that to happen? Well, you are not the first Jew to do that. In fact, the first Jew to do that was the first Jew. Abraham did that, famously. Abraham went and challenged God when God was going to destroy innocent lives. Similar kind of question. And Abraham said, would the source of justice, you, God, be willing to destroy the innocent along with the guilty? And God said, actually, Abraham, you have a point. If there are, and ultimately God said, if there are 10 righteous people in this place, I will not destroy it. So Abraham, in that confrontation with God, first of all, Abraham confronted God, and secondly, Abraham convinced God that God's approach was wrong and needed to be changed. So what we see in Torah is a God that learns in partnership with human beings. That part of our role as human beings is to challenge God. Now, actually, in your parsha, not in the part you talked about, the same thing happens again. Moses, or in an earlier parsha, in Exodus, at Mount Sinai, when the golden calf incident happens and God is going to destroy all the people, Moses says, don't do this, God. You just freed us all from Egypt. The whole world is watching. You're going to have liberated us in the greatest liberation story of all time, and then you're going to kill us? Don't do that. And God says, you're right. Sometimes I need to be reminded of my patience and my loving kindness and my compassion and my withholding of anger. And so God taught Moses 13 attributes of God that Moses was instructed. God instructed Moses, you have to remind me of my better self when I get upset. And so Moses did. And in your parsha, Moses does again. Because God is so upset, God's going to just destroy everybody. And Moses reminds God of God's wiser tendencies, of God's patience and loving kindness and compassion. And truth. And so we see, again, God using the partnership with human beings to grow, to deepen, and to sometimes change. So the God that we meet in the Torah is not already complete and perfect. The God we meet in the Torah is willing to change and learn and grow in conversation with human beings. And this is how we understand a lot of what we do as Jews, including the question of when we come up against mitzvot or confront mitzvot, and we think, well, how does this have to do with me? Is it really a problem if I were rolling women together? Or, as you raised in a very provocative way, Lily, I mean, you did it very gently, but it was a provocative idea, that maybe Jews should get tattoos of the numbers their grandparents had in the Holocaust tattooed on their arms. That is, I would say, pretty shocking. And also what it raises is this way that we as contemporary Jews, and in particular as Reform Jews, are meant to engage with Torah. What we're meant to do is take the call of Torah as a serious call upon us, upon our hearts, upon our minds, upon our souls, and to deeply consider, where does this idea, if I'm having a problem with an idea, with a commandment in the Torah, where does it come from? And you did this, you investigated. You didn't just say, this makes no sense, this is nuts, this is from so far long ago, I'm just gonna walk away. You said, okay, I have to pay attention because this is the Torah talking to me. What is the Torah saying to me? Let me try to understand what's underneath this, so that from that I can find a way to connect with what this is saying to me. And you did that about all the mitzvot that you named. You looked for previous sources of other thinkers who preceded us in time who investigated the question and had an explanation. And then you used your own conscience to evaluate that explanation and see, did it fit for your understanding of what a good Jewish life would look like in our time? That's the process of being a Reformed Jew. It isn't just saying, we're Reformed Jews, and so we can just, we don't have to take it literally, we don't have to take it that seriously, we can just do whatever we want. It's not that. It's taking it as a deep call on our souls, on our minds, on our hearts, and contemplating the way in to something that we find challenging, difficult, maybe even offensive. And in some cases, reclaiming it in an alternative or creative way that fits our times and fits our conscience. That is our process. And to connect all of this to this week's Parsha, Vayishlach, we meet Jacob this week. We've already been meeting him in previous weeks, but we continue with him. And he is on his way to meet his brother Esau. If you remember the story of Jacob and Esau, it did not go well. Jacob had fled from Esau's presence because Esau wanted to kill him. And now he's on his way back to meet him, and he's terrified. And he's afraid that Esau's coming. He hears that Esau's coming with a great number of men, and he's worried this is an army, and Esau's coming to kill him. And he's terrified, so he sends all of his family across the river, and all of his belongings, and all of the people with him across the river, and he spends the night by himself on the side of the river. And what happens that night while he's terrified is he wrestles with, let's call it a divine being. He wrestles in the night with somebody. We don't know who, but he wrestles all night long. And when the dawn rises, we heard a little bit of this when Debbie was changing Torah. When the dawn rises, he says, let me go, and he asks for, the one he's wrestling with says, let me go, and he asks for a blessing, and what he gets in the blessing is a name change. He's told you're no longer going to be called Jacob, you're going to be called Yisrael. Because you have wrestled, Yisrael means, you have wrestled with divine beings and prevailed. Yisrael means God wrestlers. We are Israel. We are Yisrael, we are God wrestlers. I know that there are people here today in this sanctuary who do not believe in God, who may feel like Torah is far away from them, who may feel like they just walk away from this whole tradition. What it is to be Jewish is to stay in the relationship, with God, to stay in the relationship with Torah, and to wrestle, to struggle, not to just take it at face value and say, okay, now I have to submit to this, but to say, I'm going to bring my whole self to this, all the way in. And I am going to wrestle, and I am going to struggle, and I'm not just going to walk away. But I'm going to find what is true here for me, what I can understand and connect to and relate to and be whole with. We don't have to cut off parts of ourselves. We don't have to be in denial. We don't have to pretend. We have to be totally, authentically in the struggle. That is what it is to be Jewish. That is what Yisrael means. That is the name that Jacob got and that we have inherited. And when Jacob left that place, he called it Peniel, for I have seen the face of God here. We are meant to be in continual relationship with the divine, struggling as we do, finding our way, looking for ways in all the time, trying to see, did someone before me understand this in a way that I could learn from, that I could find access to, that right now this seems like it makes no sense to me, or like it's too remote, or like it's even offensive, but is there something I'm missing here? Is there some question I haven't asked? Is there some better way I can understand this to stay in the relationship? And that is what I love about this place, is that you can get up here, Ari, and say, God did the wrong thing. You can get up here, Lily, and say, like, I don't get what these have to say to us. And yet you're still here, and we're still in the conversation together. And that is how our tradition evolves and changes with us. And that is how we stay a people with one another. And that is how we stay in the presence of God. Shabbat shalom. Great. It is time for us to return the Torah to the ark. So I'm going to ask Lily and Ari to come up with me so I can give them a private blessing. And I'm going to ask everyone else to please rise.
Page 374 in your prayer. Page 586 at the bottom. Aleinu l'shabeach. Aleinu l'shabeach Adon hakol לתת גאולה ליוצא בראשית שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה שלא שם דרכנו כהם וגורלנו Please be seated.
We always conclude our time together with memory. We call close the names and memories of people we love and we've lost. And so if this is a time when you are in mourning, we invite you at different stages to come, to rise and say the name of the person you're remembering out loud. If you are in Shabbat, this is the first week since the death of someone you love, I invite you to rise and say that person's name out loud. And right here on Zoom, you can write that person's name in the chat. And if you're in Shloshim in the first 30 days since the death of someone you love, I invite you to rise and say that person's name out loud. And if you are in Shaddai in the first year since the death of someone you love, I invite you to rise and say that person's name out loud. And you can remain standing. And if this is the anniversary, actually I'm in Shabbat, remember my father Eli to honor. And if this is an anniversary of death for you, this is a yard site, I invite you to rise and say the name of the person you're remembering. Right? We all rise in company with the mourners in our midst. We know that Ari's family is remembering her grandmother, Susan Kaiser, and Lily's family is remembering her great-grandmothers after whom she was named, Lucy Ellen Bogan and Virginia Barkman. And we remember these recent losses in our congregational community. Richard Samuels, stepfather of Deborah Stone, father-in-law of Daniel Weiss, and grandfather of Leo and Ruben. Erica Goren, mother of Lynn Hill. Lester Block, father of Marla Kochman, father-in-law of David Kochman. Barbara Feld, mother of Joanne Feld, mother-in-law of Scott Wenger, and grandmother of Avery and Robert Wenger. And these yard sites, Felice Aronson, Paula Antel, Lucille Antel, Rose Astro, Sharon Bardak, Rose Berlin, Edward Charles Blum, Bela Cheladonia, Bertha Clark, Joseph Ehrlich, Pearl Ellman, Gerald Feldman, Nathan Feldstein, Jack Felsenfeld, Lena Finkelstein, Jesse Fischel, Michael Gartner, Rose Gold, Esther Goodhart, Irving Goodman, Miriam Goodman, Philip Gould, Paul Grant, Louis Lindahl, Daniel Haas, Haya Hershkovitz, Joan Klinsman, Arlene Lawrence, Robert Levinson, Rebecca Levinson, Hulda Listener, Alan Lopato, Minerva Love, Abraham Malin, Emil Brown May, Sydney Unkelis, Ellen Pastor, Claire Perlmutter, Martin Radwell, Dora Raphaels, Gary Rosenson, Romana Rosenson, Irving Roth, Karen Rothman-Fried, Selwyn Shine, Monica Salter, Philip Sherkman, Charles Sinclair, Jason Sinclair, Lydia Soloff, Ethel Spry, Danny Altmeyer Ullman, Pauline Wasserman, Donald White, Jack Weeder, Ruth Wolfert. Holding them all together, we say Sichronam, Libracha, may their memories forever be a blessing. As we turn to the words of the Mourners Kaddish on page 598. Yitgadal Yitgadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma Divra Chilute V'yamlich Machute, B'chayechon V'yomechon V'chayei L'chol Beit Yisrael, B'agalar Yizman Kari V'imru, Amen. Behei Shmei Rabbah V'varach Le'elam U'amei Almayam, Yitvarach V'yishtamach V'yitpa'ar V'yitrumam V'yitnaseh, V'yithadar V'yit'aleh V'yithalal L'shmei T'kudshah B'ruch, Le'ela Mikol Berchata Asherta, Tush Bechata V'nechemata, Damiran Be'alma V'imru, Amen. Behei Shlama Rabbah Min Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu V'alko Yisrael V'imru, Amen. Oseh Shalom V'murma, V'yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'alko Yisrael V'alko Yoshvei Tevel V'imru, Amen. May the one who makes peace, make peace for all who mourn. We say together, Amen.
Oseh Shalom V'murma, V'yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'alko Yisrael V'alko Yoshvei Tevel V'imru, Amen.